who are just joining us now, and I'm saying this partly because I just realized I didn't actually. The other one. For those just joining us now, today we are doing Laksa Nyonya with our Thermomix, or my Thermomix. But it's on us fault. She realized last week that she switched it out by mistake. But anyway, yeah, we're doing Laksa Nyonya, and this is a recipe from my restaurant, and it's all over the internet because I've propagated it everywhere. But my version that you will find on my website actually takes a lot of shortcuts. And the reason for it is because I used to cook everything in bulk, and it was just easier to use powdered galangal and powdered turmeric and powdered whatever, and also fried shallots. So my recipe online that says on laksa in 15 minutes refers to using all these dried ingredients. But because we've got the Thermomix that can actually grind and mill a lot of these fresh ingredients, we're going to do them fresh, because I always maintain, regardless of whatever you would think of my shortcuts, I always acknowledge that fresh is always best, right? So we've got the lemongrass here. Should we quickly just go through all the fresh ingredients so people know what they are?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, do you want to get it closer to the
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, like Jackie said, if you can't get these ingredients, that doesn't mean you can't make a laksa. You can find dried ingredients or even pureed ingredients, like for example, one of it.
Yeah, this one here is from Malaysia. This is a galangal puree, okay? I don't actually know if it's available in Sydney, Australia, but I always, the one good thing about my job is that I kind of like get a sneak peek of like,
ingredients.
Yeah, that's right.
So, for our viewers who don't know what galangal is,
What's that?
Galangal.
Oh, galangal is kind of like a type of it belongs to the family of a ginger kind of root sort of thing. It's got a kind of like a yeah, I know. I'm always conflicted about this whole food thing, you know. No, I'm kidding. I love my job, but now one of the good things about it is I do get kind of like I get introduced to a lot of new products that are being brought into the country, or you know, by the Malaysian consulate and that sort of stuff. So I love exploring all these new stuff. So my next series, in fact, is going to hi Joanna. My next series, in fact, is going to cover like all these Malaysian prepared pastes and that sort of stuff, and actually maybe kind of cook them live on air and kind of tell you guys what it tastes like, so you know what to expect even when they show up on your shelves. But galangal is kind of like a type of ginger. I've got like I think I've got some really miserably dried out ones. Yeah, unintentionally dried out galangal. Okay, but this is what it looks like, and I kind of spaced off on processing them in the Thermomix. In fact, no, I've been putting it off because I processed it in the past and I had so much sitting in my. That's the thing about the Thermomix. Once you start experimenting with what to do with it, you end up. Hi, thanks for joining. You end up like throwing everything in there and seeing how well it processes it. So I had stacks of galangal for the longest time. But we're using galangal, we're using turmeric, and turmeric is also another variety of ginger. And that adds to, you know, a nice fragrance apart from everything else, but also a very strong yellow color. And you just got to be a little bit careful with it because it will stain your clothes and all that, okay? And the other thing is lemongrass, okay? This is what they look like. And the other reason why I use a lot of shortcuts in my business was because I didn't have a Thermomix that could process all these really well. So it was easier for me to just kind of like, I don't use candle nuts. That's quite popular in a lot of laksa recipes. This is what they look like. Essentially, they kind of add like a little bit of a nutty texture and flavor, and also helps to thicken the soup a little bit.
One cool fact, I just looked up candle nuts. I didn't know why they were called candle nuts. I thought it was just a translation. They actually, because of its oil content, they actually used to make candles traditionally.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah,
I always felt because they're quite waxy. I always did feel that they you know. Yeah, that maybe it was
the reason why.
Yeah, the reason why. Okay, but this is belacan. This is what it looks like, and Zona very nicely brought like these belacan, and what they are kind of like a preserved shrimp. They're very, very pungent.
Extremely pungent.
Yeah, and usually, I mean, you have to cook it before you use it, so you couldn't just like crush it and sprinkle it over. Don't be all right. Well, my flatmates aren't huge fans of it back when I was living at, back when I was house sharing in my uni days. But yeah, you have to cook it before you use it. And usually it will involve toasting it in the oven or just kind of like pan frying it till it crumbles, okay? I use a shortcut and I use a powdered version. and this is called powder. It literally says belacan powder here. I think you may struggle to find it in some grocery stores, but my supplier has no problems getting this. So it saves me having to kind of like pan fry it till it's in granular form.
Yeah.
And it also helps me to measure it easily as well. So I basically spoon it into my recipes, into my whatever it is I'm cooking.
It's very interesting because we've got two types of belacan. There's actually another one type that we don't have, which is more of a paste. And
I've got that in my.
oh,
Yeah, I've got it down here. Yeah.
It's a funny story with that one because I had given this recipe for a satay sauce and it had belacan. And traditionally, we were used to actually toasting it. And I told my colleague of mine, toast it first before you make the whole paste for the satay sauce. And she did, and she said it was just very messy. I don't understand how you could toast it. I didn't think that she had actually gotten the wet paste and tried to toast it.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with just this style of belacan, and this is the one that you would dry roast on the pan.
Yeah. The wet one is usually used in a lot of Thai recipes.
Yeah.
And also to me sometimes it's easy as well. Just toasting it brings out the flavor, makes it a lot more pungent. But if you're cooking it in a curry and you're making a curry paste, and and if you think, oh, you don't want to waste your time toasting, you can just throw it in as long as it's cooked up.
It's not a big deal. I mean, a lot of Asian cooking is about also smells, not just about taste. And that's why I think our grandmothers probably would tell you, you fry it until you smell it, you look at it, the textures and everything. So it's quite amazing that they use really all their senses to cook, whereas these days we're just putting all the different ingredients in.
Yeah. I've got some chilies here. Okay, these are dried big chilies. I've covered, by the way, if anyone is watching this who don't know me from my other series, I do a daily 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients broadcast covering all these different Asian ingredients. So I have covered these in past broadcasts. But essentially, these are large chilies that have been dried. And they are a very nice dark color, and they're very mild as well. So they're perfect for a laksa. I notice a lot of people who attempt making laksa at home, and I have to point this out: 99% of Malaysians, transplanted Malaysians, don't leave Malaysia knowing how to make their own laksa. Am I right?
No.
Nobody knows how to make their own laksa, and usually this is where they go wrong. They use the wrong type of chili. Okay, because they usually use either not enough of this, or they use the small bird's-eye chilies, which are very, very, very spicy but extremely sharp, and they don't add the color that you want in a nice laksa. Okay, so you want a nice dark red color. And the way you use the dried chilies is you have to soak it, and usually I would suggest boiling it in water, but Zona's got her thermoserver here, so we've just soaked it in some hot water in the thermoserver. Okay, and this is what it looks like. It's been soaking for about, I guess, about 10 minutes, just before we went on air. Okay, and then we're going to throw it in the blender, in the Thermomix, and we're going to blend it along with all these other ingredients as well. And the other ingredient I just want to quickly cover, this is what we call laksa leaves, casually. In Malay, it's called daun kesum. Your Vietnamese grocery store might know it as Vietnamese mint, okay? And that's the other thing about all these kind of like Asian,
Well, the scientific name, I think, is polygonum leaves, which
polygonum,
my dad uses a lot too.
That's right.
But I bet if you go to an Asian grocer, they'd be like, what?
That's right. Yeah, nobody knows polygonum. So just ask for Vietnamese mint, or if they're like all favorite Malaysian cooking, say laksa leaves, okay? Don't say daun kesum unless they're Malay, they won't know what you're talking about. And I'm just using some fresh onion over here. In my recipe, it says use fried shallots, okay? Fried shallots to me is a shortcut because it saves you having to fry it. And then we're using some garlic. And in terms of seasoning, I use sugar and chicken stock granules is what I use for a lot of my seasoning. You don't have to use that. I know some people are a little bit averse to using it. Essentially, chicken stock granules are kind of like the Malaysian version of stock cubes, right? Nicer. And the other ingredient that I'm going to use is dried shrimp. This has already been pre-minced by my Thermomix. But I want to show you, if you're not familiar with dried shrimp, this is what it looks like. Hopefully you can make it out. Okay. Now, growing up in Malaysia, back in the day, it was considered kind of like one of those poor man's foods, right? Nowadays, they're super expensive. They can be. Usually, they come in different grades depending on the size and the quality and all that. This particular one is the cheapest grade available. Because the other reason for it is it's very tiny. But it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to mince it anyway. So I've already pre-minced this. And the way you would use this usually is you would soak it in some water and then rinse it out, and then you would use it for whatever it is in your cooking, either whole or minced. Okay. Okay. So let's get started.
Let's go. So,
Okay.
of course, we're going to need a lot of the whole and dry ingredients. So we can start with the lemongrass. So they're just pre-cut. You want mainly the thicker end stems. You don't want the tops of the leaves. So only about maybe 3 inches or about 5 centimeters of that bit. So we'll put that in there. What else do we have?
We've already got the galangal puree. So
So if you've pre-toasted, dry roasted your belacan paste, you can put that. Usually it's about 20 grams or 1 tablespoon's worth that you can put in. But some people would say a finger width wide if they've got the block. We'll put some of the candle nut leaves. We'll blend everything together. It's basically like a 1 pot. Wonder.
I don't use candle nut, by the way, so this is
so even if you don't have it. Well, it's funny because the replacement that they some recipes say is to use macadamias.
Yeah.
In some parts of the world, macadamias are cheap. Some parts they're actually very expensive.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can always, because coconut cream or coconut milk already gives that creamy taste to it.
Yeah.
But the candle nut, as opposed to macadamia nut, is actually quite nutty. So macadamia has a nice smooth flavor to it, but candle nut is just nuttier, and it's actually quite toxic if you eat it raw.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I found out that don't try to bite into it. I have tried a little bit, and I'm still alive. But so I put in the turmeric, the ginger. We're going to put in the galangal puree later on.
Okay.
So you can see that a lot of the ingredients are whole. The lemongrass is most notorious in having to chop up. I think I'm going to put the onions in this stage as well. So the onions are just halved. And you can see that even in bulk, you will be able to blend it.
And then throw the garlic while we're
So,
at it.
garlic. So this is pre-minced. You can use whole garlic.
Yeah.
Do
you want to put the chilies in?
So we'll put all the fresh chilies in here and the dried chilies that's been soaking there. So some of them soaking here. How hot does that look? She's putting a whole heap.
They're actually very mild.
The bigger they are, the milder. And if you don't like it too hot, take the seeds out.
Yeah. And if you want, you can just use paprika.
Spice hot paprika. Yeah, should be alright.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll do that. Traditionally, it would all be done with a pesto and mortar, and that would probably take a good half an hour if you were doing that quantity, or maybe longer.
But also they have these stone mills in Malaysia as well for the tougher. So the mortar and pestle isn't going to cut it for a lot of the tougher stuff.
So we're going to use the highest speed. Let's see what it looks like. 5 seconds.
I'll just hold it up. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Okay, it's very nice.
And that was just 5 seconds.
Cool. I would actually do it.
We'll do it a bit more. So it just depends on the texture that you want. You can do it a bit longer. We've got quite a big quantity here, which is not what we're going to use all the whole thing for cooking, but. That's another 5 seconds, so 10 seconds in total. Smell it.
Okay.
It's very rich.
So this is what you want to get it to. Okay. And I'm actually, you don't know this, I'm actually talking to 2 different cameras. Okay, we're going to take out like half of this. Yeah. Okay. Fry it up. So that's got us about 1.5 cups of paste at the moment. We're going to add some oil to this and cook it in the Thermomix.
Yes.
Okay,
So
yeah, we'll add it now. Yeah.
So what I like about the laksa paste is that it's a base paste in a lot of traditional Nyonya cooking as well. Like they call it rempah, which is a standard paste. You remove one ingredient, you add a couple of other ingredients, and it's just versatile to make it for other different things. What I found is this laksa paste also makes a good Nyonya ota, which is a bit like a fish custard. I mean, the texture is a bit, fish cake. It's steamed fish cake, and it's just beautiful. So even though you've got heaps of paste, you don't always have to eat laksa noodles. You can also just make it quite versatile and make other condiments.
Yeah. Okay. This is, I'm just using caroteno oil. It's from Malaysia, and it's a red palm fruit oil, which is healthy. It shares the same kind of properties as coconut oil. So if you want to keep an eye out for this, you should be able to find this at Coles in Australia anyway. But this is grown in sustainable plantations in Malaysia. I know there's some, some people are always a little bit leery about palm oil plantations and that sort of stuff because of environmental reasons. But the caroteno's plantations are all sustainable, and there's no orangutan in Malaysia, in West Malaysia. Okay, so no orangutan habitats were destroyed in the growing of these palm oil trees. And I mentioned before, there's chicken stock granules, kind of like what the Asians like to call it magic powder. I use this particular brand. No, you don't have to. But this seems to be the go-to brand that a lot of Asian restaurateurs use. And it contains sugar, salt, and MSG as well. I don't have an issue using MSG, but if you add MSG averse, you can leave it out. But
or find a suitable stock cube or paste that you prefer in your diet.
Yeah.
The other thing about the Thermomix, it comes with a basic cookbook that tells you a lot of basic staples that you can have at home and make from scratch. So it also has chicken stock paste, and it's a concentrate. It's a liquid concentrate rather than a powder, but you can cook it a lot longer and then make it into powder. It's also got a vegetable stock or a meat stock. So if you're already a Thermomix user, you would have those recipes on hand, so you can even use that in place of this just to add flavour.
I'll just add a bit of sugar to this. I'm not measuring anything. But you can always adjust the flavour, when you cook it up. So the paste, once it's cooked up, you can store it in jars and keep it in your fridge. It'll keep for weeks and weeks in your fridge. Or before you fry it up, this pre-fried, this is what it looks like. You can freeze this, okay? This won't keep that long in the fridge. It might keep for a few days, a week or something like that. But if it's been fried up, it will keep much longer.
So what we've got here is the Pad Thai style noodles.
Yeah. Okay. Goes to show that we Malaysians aren't that fixated on getting the exact type of noodle.
Yeah. So what I've got here is Jackie mentioned the thermoserver where we had the dried chilies soaking. It's actually a double wall insulated stainless steel thermal bowl, and it keeps food hot in here for 2 hours or cold for 1 hour. And what I love about using this as a shortcut is that if I put distilled water in it, and you can see that the noodles are actually dried noodles, they're not fresh noodles. And in just about 5 minutes with boiling water, it actually softens up. Just need to push it, soak it, make sure it's all fully submerged. Soak up.
And usually when you're cooking this, I like to cook this for a good 20 minutes, half an hour, but we'll show you what it looks like after a few minutes, so you can see that you can actually serve it up as long as it's cooked up. I just like to have I like it drier and a little bit more gutting.
Well, traditionally, I think if you asked a lot of traditional cooks who would cook this on a wok, they would say you have to saute it until the oil splits, and that's when you know it's the right time to start putting in the coconut milk and all the other ingredients. So it just depends on how strong you want the aroma and the flavor to be. And even if you were to freeze this, you can do two things, can't you? You can cook it all together. And then freeze part of what you want. Or you could keep it raw.
Yeah, keep it raw but freeze it. And that does not need freezing. Okay, you can keep that in the fridge for a good 8 weeks. But if you freeze it, it'll keep longer. Okay. Now the other thing I want to point out is I know that we're covering a lot of exotic ingredients here, but things like laksa leaves, we call them laksa leaves, but really curry laksa does not use laksa leaves, okay? So you don't be stressed out about having to hunt down every last ingredient that we've shown you here today. Like I said, I don't use candle nuts in my laksa, okay? And in fact, generally I find that my laksa soup gets almost too thick at the end of the day. So to me, the candle nut is a little bit
that's because you use coconut cream instead of coconut milk.
Yeah.
So I guess you can replace it if you're using candle nuts. You want to use coconut milk because coconut milk is lighter, it's not as fatty and then candle nuts will add that nuttiness and thickness to it. So it's more either or.
Yeah, and also candle nuts, if you got Thermomix, use it. If you don't, then you're gonna need to pound it because your normal food person.
And water.
Yeah.
Oh, that smells good.
Okay. So you can see, hopefully you can see this on camera.
So the oil's already started to split, so it's a very beautiful red color and the oil stands out.
Yeah. Okay. I hope you can see this. I'm going to take a photo of this before we throw it back in to make the soup with.
So what shall we do next?
Okay.
Putting it back. Yep.
Yeah, we'll put it back in and we're going to now use it to make the laksa soup.
I like that we're doing laksa today. It kind of also lets us revisit the first time Jackie saw the Thermomix.
Yeah.
So when I told her about it, because I fell in love with the Thermomix because I knew it could just very well do this without having a separate blender, pot and pan, like 10 million different utensils in the kitchen and you're cooking and the messes that it makes. So I told Jackie, you have to see it. And she decided, let's do a laksa Nyonya. So this was the first dish that she saw it do.
Yeah.
And look, we've just blended it, we've just sauteed it, and now we're going to make the soup in it. And that's all we needed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so let's add the coconut cream. Again, I'm not measuring anything. I'm going to stick some water
into it. Yeah.
And you just want to bring this to a boil, and if you have things like
tofu.
Yeah, if you have things like tofu and that sort of stuff, that's when they will go in now. If you use tofu puffs, surprisingly, quite a few Westerners don't know what tofu puffs is. Tofu puffs are their association with tofu generally is limited to the hard tofu that you use in a lot of stir fries and that sort of stuff. I've used tofu puffs in some of my recipes for people to complain. Why am I frozen?
Oh, it's
okay, cool. Yeah, frozen here. I don't know if I was freezing over there, but yes, I was talking about tofu puffs. A lot of people don't realize that tofu puffs are what they are meant to be spongy. Okay, and the beauty of tofu puffs, so basically if you can imagine tofu that's been fried long enough, it will turn into tofu puff. It creates this kind of like labyrinth of like it looks like a sponge essentially once you cut it up in half. But it's beautiful in laksa because it soaks up all the curry gravy and the flavors. But I have cooked curries. I did a tofu and vegetable curry frozen meal, and I had someone complain, oh, the tofu's seemed a bit weird, like they were all spongy. I think they're meant to be spongy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are lots of different types
That's actually
of
my
tofu.
favorite part because the tofu puffs are actually fried, so it's slightly crisp on the outside, and the way it absorbs the flavor of this laksa soup,
Yeah.
it's actually like it's giving me the best part.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw the egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we're gonna have enough time to swallow it up, but it's alright. Yeah.
So what you can see now is look at the texture of the noodles, and we're going to strain it using the basket. I'm not actually showing off my chopstick skills here. I think if my aunt saw me do this, she'd be like, you have to go back to chopstick school. So you don't want to overboil it or even over soak it, just a nice blanch so everything is separated. If you did overdo it, then it's probably going to get too gluggy, and by the time you cook the laksa soup, it will just become a mush.
Yeah, just show you the
It's almost like an al dente texture.
But at the end result should be actually soft. I had someone actually, that drives me nuts when people, I had someone that actually linked me to a mobile app to do with noodles and noodle recipes, and one of the screenshots, I couldn't download it because it's only available on iPhones and I'm not an iPhone person, but one of the screenshots of cooking Asian noodles is that Asian noodles are supposed to be al dente. No, they're not. Okay, the final texture should be soft. Okay, so
it's just that because if you're adding the hot soup in
Yeah.
it, that will continue cooking the noodles. So when you've blanched it, you still kind of want it slightly over al dente, but by the time you put the soup in, so it's not too But that's
Yeah. Yeah, that's because essentially we're kind of like recooking it again, sort of thing. Just like if you're using rice sticks when you soak it in water. Yeah.
So that's got
Okay.
another 6 minutes to go.
So we'll let that cook. So just covering different types of laksa. Zona mentioned curry laksa before, and really curry laksa is kind of like a glorified curry, right? It uses curry powder, and I actually just came away from a session covering curry powder. So curry laksa essentially is curry powder plus garlic and onion and lemongrass and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like a really, really liquid curry.
Well, I guess you can get away with using curry powder, but the fact would be to complement the flavor would be to use good stock.
Yeah.
So you could have a chicken laksa with the chicken stock. You could use a seafood laksa with. Have you done your prawn stock?
Yeah.
Recipe ingredients. So look that up. You can do that for seafood style. So it's like a bisque base, and then add the curry powder, I guess.
The curry powder needs to be cooked up the way we just did this. Okay, so instead of like the galangal and the turmeric and the ginger and all that, just use curry powder. Mix it into a paste. Add the onion and garlic, and fry it up. And then, you can use, usually what they do is crush the lemongrass in that sort of thing. So if you imagine the laksa vendor in Malaysia, they'll have a big pot and they'll have like a few like bruised lemongrass sticks sticking in there, cooking away. And sometimes they do, in fact, we don't actually use this much, but I have seen recipes for curry laksa where they have this in the stock boiling away. But the way we use it here today for our laksa nyonya is that we're going to use it as a garnish on top, okay? And in Singapore, Singapore's famous katong laksa actually cuts this into mince, okay? I'll just hold up laksa leaves so you can see what they look like, okay? And this is actually from Zona's garden, would you believe? It's a little bit seasonal. I struggle sometimes to get it. The other thing that's common with laksa nyonya is shredded cucumber.
Okay.
So I don't have any cucumber today, so we're just gonna kind of like just
Well,
wing it a little bit.
when you talk about Nyonya, it also depends on which region.
Yeah.
Nyonya is Straits Chinese, so they've been in the Malay Peninsula region for like centuries. So they've already integrated and fusioned their culture with a lot of Malay and a bit of Indian culture, even whatever's that's
Depending on where they're from. Yeah.
So you've got the Penang Nyonya, you've got the KL, Malacca Nyonya, you've got the Singapore Nyonya, and the three of them are quite distinct even in their flavour of cooking. So when you say Nyonya style food, you have to be a bit more specific even then. So if some people think, oh, I know Nyonya food and it shouldn't be like this, if it has tamarind or lime, that's actually from the Penang area or the Thai influence.
Yeah, the Malacca influence, this is actually more Malacca Laksa essentially. Malacca Nyonya is more coconutty creamy sort of thing, so they use a lot of kind of like rich flavor. But basically one common denominator with Nyonya cooking is a lot of fresh herbs. Okay, so that's how you tell.
Strong spiced flavors.
Yeah.
That complement.
What you say about Nyonya, it doesn't help the fact that even in Malaysia, when they try to promote Nyonya food, like I went to Penang and shot a series of videos where they were promoting Nyonya food, but you think Penang Nyonya, okay, you expect all Penang Nyonya dishes. No, they have some Malacca Nyonya dishes as well. You know, but
so they embrace each other.
Because I guess maybe they think that the audience for those videos would not know any better, which I mean, which I guess you can argue, but it is a little bit confusing when I tell people, oh, I'm going to Penang and I'm doing Nyonya food, and then suddenly there's all these Malacca Nyonya dishes.
Even something as simple as a otak-otak, where I talked about the paste that you can actually just add egg and fish and coconut milk, and then you steam it, and it comes up into this custard-like texture. The Malacca styles do it differently. So similar ingredients, but just presentation. They grill it,
and they use coconut leaves. In Penang, so that's the difference. The Penang version is steamed in banana leaves, whereas the Malacca version is grilled in long coconut leaves. My version is actually a pollination between the two. Okay, mine is grilled, but I don't use coconut leaves because you can't buy coconut leaves here. I use banana leaves, so I kind of split the difference. So I'm not helping in clarifying all these either.
That's fine, and I think that's what Malaysians embrace. It's actually the fusion without recognizing that what the flavors of food that they're trying, even though it's the same name, it's technically everything is fusion. Which I actually wanted to bring up when you mentioned sliced cucumber for the Nyonya style. There is another version in Penang that's called the Siamese Laksa.
I had that. That's actually my favorite.
Yeah, my dad used to do, and it also has grated pineapple. So it has a very sweetish, sharp, and pungent flavor to it.
It's like a cross between Penang Asam Laksa and regular curry laksa.
Yeah, because it has a tamarind flavor into it, and then also mixed with a bit of the curry paste.
Yeah, it's extremely rich, but it's just fabulous.
Very, very fresh.
And the irony of it, it's called actually Baba Laksa Nyonya. Baba Laksa Nyonya. But the best one I had was actually cooked by this woman from Thailand. Who was married to a Penang guy, and she had a stall over at the bottom of Ket Lok Si Temple. Nice. But, I don't know if it's called Siamese, but I know it's supposed to be like Baba Laksa Nyonya.
My dad introduced it to us as Siamese Laksa. So the amount of prep that he would have, because he would have all the ingredients grated and fresh laid out on the table. So you'd have all the grated pineapple, the grated cucumbers, and then the laksa leaves, the noodles, and then the soup broth, and then a bit of the shredded fish. So you could choose to either add the fish together with the broth or have it separately. So you can kind of even mix and match. It's almost like a buffet style where you make up your own bowl of noodles.
Okay,
so we're getting a lot of steam there.
Shall we turn it up?
Yeah, sure. Just a few seconds to go.
See how it looks. I'd like more coconut milk in this.
Coconut cream.
Let's just taste it and see what it's like. Okay, it's very flavoursome. quite spicy.
Okay.
Actually.
Lots
I think
of
some of the
punch
chilies
this
you
time
put in,
around.
yeah.
Yep. We did put heaps of chili.
Yeah. And you're gonna find that the oil will rise to the top after a while, so you should sign up with the nice laksa is like getting a nice oil sheen over the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think some people say that about the nice curries as well when they actually
Yeah.
split. But people panic when they haven't seen it before.
yeah,
Because if you go to restaurants, you don't actually get to experience what it looks like in a big pot, the beautiful laksa or
Yeah.
curry broth,
yeah,
where the oil splits. That's
Yeah.
actually normal.
yeah, that's right. I'm just gonna spoon it up now.
Sure. Oh, that looks so good. Colors are so rich.
Yeah, there you go. Let's trim some laksa leaves. There you go. So if you can imagine, you're gonna have to visualize the shredded cucumber and the boiled egg, which I like. Again, boiled egg is just completely something that I chew up. Some laksas, you might, you know, that's the other thing I want to mention as well. Street food in Malaysia is meant to be cheap. Okay, street food is cheap food. So there's a lot of the aspects of street food is is that they don't have like any kind of frills and any kind of like.
And it's very sustainable because you get a lot
Yeah.
of ingredients locally. Like here in Australia, I think what I found fascinating is a lot of these seafood laksa you can't get in Malaysia because you've
Sure.
got big giant
Yeah.
king prawns almost,
Yeah.
and then Jackie's made some beautiful scallop style in her steamed scallops in her laksa. So these are all luxurious versions
Yeah,
of
yeah,
laksa
that's
you
right,
can't
that's
get
right.
in Malaysia.
So you don't, unless you're eating at a high-end like hotel,
hotel,
like
yeah.
Shangri-La or whatever, you don't usually have boiled egg with your laksa, right?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
make it your own. I don't even know what the word laksa mean, but it is definitely a fusion between the Chinese flavors and the Malay Indian cultures
Yeah.
all into that region.
Yeah, yeah.
Malaysia, that's Thai, laksa even.
Yeah.
So there you go. Make your own version too.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
See?
We'll post the recipe online
Yeah.
as soon as I get the chance at jackiem.com.au. And if if you're not already on our mailing list, go to jackiem.com.au/Thermomix, okay? And that's where we're going to be posting a lot of tips that we don't even get to cover in these live broadcasts or in our blog and that sort of stuff. So make sure you sign up and we'll see you next week this time. I'll catch you later. Ciao.